We have a PC going on display at Computex. It will be surrounded by some of the best in the industry, so we need to make this a banger. Case packed full of tubing and lots of customization. Now this will not be a smooth ride because we had to deal with some destroyed hardware. I hope to earn your subscription today. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the CTE C750 case from Thermaltake. CTE is kind of like their, I guess, new form factor where the whole case is rotated, like the motherboard orientation, so the airflow goes directly from one side to the other, keeping it nice and cool. Basically, it's meant to have better airflow. Now, this particular case comes with three 140mm ARGB fans, which are pre-installed, and this case is also black in color, but you can get a snow edition one as well. Okay, what do we work? Oh, it's upside down. Okay. What's that? Okay, that's the user manual. I assume that the screws are on the inside somewhere. Dust filter on the bottom. Let's turn this thing around. So what do we have here? There's a tempered glass panel on the front, but there's plenty of side ventilation popping out, so it could take air in. There's about a 2cm gap between the front panel and the tempered glass as well. The back is completely open with dust filters, so the air can freely move through. Also with a fan or radiator mounting bracket as well on both the front and the back. We could also mount, looks like to be a 360mm radiator on the bottom with a support bracket for mounting all of your reservoirs and things like that. And of course, we've got venting at the back of the case because we have a 360mm mount next to the motherboard tray on the inside. The graphics card mount can also be swapped to mount it vertically or horizontally, depending on what you're after for the build. So once we get this thing completely open, we'll check it out and we'll come up with some layout ideas to see if we can create something unique and special for this build. All right, our first step, we need to completely clean this case out so that we have a blank canvas to work with. So we'll start with the radiator brackets. 2 screws up the top and 2 down the bottom. We'll also remove the reservoir bracket. Let's also remove this back panel to see what we are working with behind it. This could actually make for a good potential spot for some pass-through fittings as well. Well guys, another week, another build, and this one is going to be something really special because this particular build is going on display at Computex 2023, which is at the end of May, beginning of June. So that'll be on display and you guys will see it in some more videos being featured on numerous amounts of YouTube channels. But for this one, we actually have the Z790 Asus Apex motherboard, which is an all-white motherboard. I'm not too sure how this is gonna go with our theme that we're going for though, because the case is actually black. So we'll have to figure something out between these. Now my aim today is to unbox everything up to the case, fit things in to see what we can actually do to work with and what space we have in the case to work with as well. For today's CPU, we're gonna go with the Intel Core i7-13700. This is not the K variant, and I have a good reason why, but this is a 16-core, 24-thread processor with a max turbo boost of 5.2 gigahertz. Now, the reason why we're going with the i7-13700 and not the K variant in a water-cooled build is because, number one, it is a display build, so it's not really gonna matter. But number two, I would normally go with something high-end like a 13900K for a water-cooled system because obviously you could overclock with that. Unfortunately, my 13900K is going to a celebrity build that we are working on. It's coming very soon. So this is the only CPU we have left. All right, let's show you guys how to install the CPU. First things first, take note of where the triangle is on the protective capping and the triangle on the CPU right there. Second step is we need to remove the latch from the locking position, bring it all the way up, and then lift the cover up. Now the triangle that we first mentioned on the cover and the triangle on the CPU socket are meant to line up, and the CPU can only go in one way because there's little notches on all 4 sides of the CPU. So do not force it in, let it drop into place like so. Do not force it, and then you can put the cover down, the protective capping will pop off like so, and then you can anchor it in place with the little latching mechanism right there. Now I always say this, guys, keep this capping because you're gonna need it for warranty and returns. For the system, we're going with the MP600 Pro from Corsair. I really have no real reason why we chose this. I guess the only reason is because I've already got games and installation of Windows already installed. So it's going to make it much easier for us to get this build up and running and tested to make sure that it's good to go for computex. This is 2 terabytes worth of storage as well, with 6,550 write and 7,000 megabytes per second read. Now the motherboard also has its own built-in heatsink, which means we're not gonna have any use for this one, otherwise we can't put motherboard 1 back on. So we'll throw that thermal pad out because we just tore all that in half, so there's no use for that. I'm glad that these are super easy to come apart because it makes it much easier for us when we go to try and install this into the motherboard. And that thermal pad is no longer in use either. Let's install it. Our NVMe drive is the next step, and this will be installed underneath this very big heatsink right here, which requires 2 screws to be removed. Don't forget to remove the protective plastic film to reveal the thermal pad underneath, also on the heatsink. To install that NVMe drive, find the little notch in this bracket right here and the little notch on the drive itself, line them up, push it in at a little bit of an angle, and it'll clip in like so. Now we can push it down and lock it in place with this little lever right here. Now we can put the heatsink back on. You know, I was actually planning to install 4 sticks of the thermaltake Tough RAM Z1 RGB DDR5 RAM, but it turns out the motherboard only has 2 slots, which is completely fine. 4 would have been fine as well because the build is just going on display. It's just that DDR5 at the moment is working best on 2 sticks and has best compatibility without anything going wrong. But 2 sticks, nonetheless, is going to do well in this system. They are black though, and I do have some white ones, so we'll figure out if we want to swap these out or not, depending on the theme that we go for. Right now, we just need to test fit everything and make sure that we have enough room to work with. To install our RAM, firstly, we need to release all of the notches on both sides of the RAM slot. You'll notice in the RAM slot there is a little cutting there which lines up with the little cutting on the RAM nodule itself. So line that up, put one end in the other side, and then with a little bit of force, push it down until you hear it click on both sides. Now don't use too much force, but just enough to let it click in. Obviously you can go overboard and break them, but it's really not that hard. So I came across this block. This is the Pacific W9 from Thermaltake, and I thought to myself, you know, this is going to be a bit of a weird combination build because we've got the white motherboard, but this Thermaltake block is perfect because this PC is going to be on display at the Thermaltake booth and it matches the color scheme of the motherboard perfectly. So if we can somehow make this work with the rest of the build, I think this is the perfect CPU block for that motherboard. So it's time to install our CPU block, and the good thing with Asus motherboards is they provide mounting holes for the 1700 socket as well as older sockets, so you can actually use your older CPU coolers. So I've gone ahead and mounted the back plate, and then these are held in place with these plastic things right here, which simply screw on in each corner. So let's do opposite corners to get it all started because I want nice even pressure on the back plate. Next step, just a small dot of thermal paste on the CPU. Now that the thermal paste is applied, we can install our CPU block. followed by our small plastic spacers. And then we can start locking it down by screwing down these screws. Now again, I like to do opposite corners because it helps to spread the thermal paste evenly. I mean, if we were to do the top 2 screws, then the thermal paste would all push this way and it wouldn't be an even spread of thermal paste. So you may get hot spots on the CPU. And that's why we gradually tighten opposite corners. As always, before installing our motherboard, we need to make sure it either has an IO shield pre-installed or we need to check our motherboard box and install it first. Now our motherboard in this particular build is going to be going in this way, so you'll access all of your USB ports from the top of the case. That's how it was designed. All right, let's try and get this bottom screw in place. Then we'll go for this top opposite corner, which will anchor the motherboard in place so that we are free to install all of the other screws. Okay guys, I think these have to be one of my new favorite fans. These are the Swafan EX12 RGB fans from Thermaltake. And the reason why I say they're some of my favorite is because they have 2 things about them that make them, well, I can't say unique. Definitely one thing that makes it incredibly unique, but remember the Lian Li fans, how successful they were by clipping in together so they only had one cable for power? Well, these fans do exactly just that. But not only that, they also come with reversible fan blades so that if you want some intake or exhaust, you can have it whichever way you want with the good looking side facing the front instead of the bad looking side. So that is the extremely unique thing about these fans. I cannot wait to put these in the system. So in this build, I am going to be using 2 Thermaltake Pacific CLD 360mm radiators. I'm not quite sure if I want to put it on the back wall next to the motherboard tray or on the 2 side panels. However, this is a radiator with an FPI of 25, which means it needs some fans that are able to handle a lot of static pressure. So the Thermaltake fans that we have actually have a decent static pressure. And if I compare it to any other fans out on the market, the only fans that really come to mind with a similar sort of design aspect with the daisy chain would be the new EK Quantum Impulse fans. Now to give you guys a bit of an example, the new EK Quantum Impulse fans have a static pressure of about 1.94 and that is measured at 1800 RPM. These brand new Thermaltake fans have a static pressure of 2.39 measured at 2000 RPM. So if you actually lowered these to 1800 RPM, they would still be greater than the brand new EK ones. So that's why I'm super excited to give these ones a try. Not only that, but as I said, I think these are some of the best connectivity. Therefore, we only have to use one power cable, which I think was one of the issues with Thermaltake's fans previously. Time to install our fans on the radiators. Wow, I love how those connect. That was pretty easy. So I have decided that we're going to be going with 2 360mm radiators, and the fins are very dense on these, like I said, 25 FPI. So the cooling is going to be much greater than a regular 360mm radiator. So one of these on each side should do for the CPU and the GPU. It's also our first time using these fans, so I'm very excited to see how they go. So the fans are installed. One radiator is going to go on the left, one on the right. Now, one is going to bring the cooler air in and one is going to exhaust also cooler air, but it's going to have a little more heat from the motherboard. So that means that we need to swap 3 of the fans around on one of these radiators to reverse the airflow. Let's do that. So I just finished installing the radiators and I noticed on the CPU block, look at all of these little cracks forming around the edge. They're not even around the screw holes in the 4 corners there. So it's got nothing to do with over tightened screws on the block, but it seems to be happening all around this little bracket, the thermaltake bracket, especially here where it's very prolific here. You can see it all coming out from the sides there. I do not feel comfortable using this in the build, so I'm gonna swap this out and probably chuck this in the bin. I've also decided to rotate the CPU block 90 degrees so that the two ports are beside each other. Let's get that done. Well, at least this one can't crack because it's made out of metal, probably better fitting for the motherboard. But nonetheless, we'll figure out something to do with the other one because I don't just want it to go to waste. I want to make something of it. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do with the back section yet, but for the time being, let's install these two exhaust fans up the top to add a bit of light up the top as well. And then we'll see if we can put some intakes at the back maybe, but we'll wait and see because I want to plan out what I want to do with the tubing before I do anything with that back section. Our graphics card for this system is none other than the Asus GeForce RTX 4080 Strix GPU going into this system. And with this, obviously we're gonna have access to ray tracing, NVIDIA DLSS, and of course NVIDIA Reflex, which is something that we've been learning a lot about recently. And it's such a cool little feature that NVIDIA GPUs past the 9000 series can utilize. Basically, when you're in game and you're peeking around a corner, sometimes you see an enemy and you shoot him, but he ends up killing you, but you feel like you've shot him first. That is system latency lag. If you enable that feature in your favorite games, that essentially reduces system latency by up to 60%. So you should be getting those kills faster than they are. Now, it's unfortunate that we will be taking the standard stock heatsink off of this because it looks so beefy and gorgeous. I love the colors of this design, but we're essentially going to be chopping this graphics card in half with a water block on it, which is going to give us plenty more room in the system to lay out all of our tubing and fit a reservoir in. Okay, so we need to fully take apart the graphics card in order to install our GPU water block. Let's get unscrewing. I was really struggling to find a GPU block for this card, and to be honest, I actually thought Thermaltake had stopped making them, but thank God we had Asus on board because the only GPU water blocks Thermaltake makes now is Asus, probably because it's the more popular card that sells. So they've got the Strix block for the 4080 and the 4090, plus they still have the 3070, the 3080 and the 3090. And also the good news about this is we're also going to be cutting down the footprint of the GPU because look how thin this water block is. It's only that wide, so we're going to have so much room to work with. This is absolutely amazing. All right, time to install the GPU block. So we will drop that on. We've already got the thermal pads on as well. Look at that. Look how much shorter this block, or GPU I should say, is than before when it had the stock heatsink on. We're gonna have so much more room to play with here. Okay, so first things first, we wanna put a washer on all four of these corners. Now again, much like with the CPU block, I'm going to install the screws at opposite corners to make sure that there is an even spread of thermal paste as best as we can. And now we've got the backplate, which doesn't really serve any purpose other than aesthetics. So we'll just go ahead and we'll screw all of these in. If I put it the right way first. Finally, we get to install our water block GPU. Look how small it is in this case. It's only about the size of the motherboard, which is excellent because we have plenty of room down the bottom to work with for tuning. So for the power supply, we want to make sure we have some good, reliable juice to power this system, especially with an RTX 4080 graphics card. So we have an ATX 3.0 compatible power supply. This is the Tough Power GF3 from Thermaltake. 1000 watts, 80 plus gold certified. And the awesome thing about this power supply as well is it has a zero smart fan feature that you can switch on or off, which enables the fan to start operation all the time or just when it needs it, so you can reduce noise in your system essentially. Not only that, but we do have the 16-pin power connector for your latest 4000 series graphics cards from NVIDIA. Now this is the time where we ask our community to leave your thoughts down in the comments about some ideas that we should do for this build. As I said, it's going on display, so we want it to be as best as we can get it. So any ideas, suggestions that you have with this build, put them down in the comments below for us. Now part 2 will be coming very soon, guys, so stay tuned. It will be the final results. I'm just waiting to collect all your guys' feedback and then we'll make progress from here. Now, something else that may interest you is this custom Overwatch themed PC that we built in 1 week. Check it out here if you're interested.